There are a lot of questions surrounding Vengestone right now. In Season 13, the Skull Sorcerer used the geckos and months to mine for the material and sell it to the highest bidder in exchange for stability to Shintaro. But after Cole defeated Vangelis, we all assumed that 2021 would lead us to his client. But instead, we went a different route and were kinda left a little Vengestone-less. In Seabound, Misdemeanor was transporting a shipment of Vengestone. It didn't provide anything to the main story since it was in the first episode alone, but that sequence basically said, the Vengestone arc is still happening, just not in the foreground. And one of the main questions people have regarding this arc ever since it was introduced in Season 13 was, who is the buyer? Who was the Skull Sorcerer selling the Vengestone? I already made a video speculating who he or she could be if you want to hear my thoughts, but the second question now is, why? What is the buyer's endgame here? What is he or she trying to achieve? Well, today I'm going to dive into some possible speculation, talk about some of the theories that's been going on around, and I'll tell you what I think is most likely. Remember, none of this stuff is confirmed. It's all just a sea of ideas. So we'll have to wait until 2022 to get a confirmed answer. So the first theory that I've seen being thrown around the most is that the buyer is Nauticon or Pythor, and they are using the Vengestone to exact revenge on the ninja. For Nauticon, I actually can see it happen. His teapot has made several Easter egg appearances as of late. I've said in my Vengestone Buyer video that Clutch Powers could have released Nauticon by accident due to that orange flash. But Nauticon himself hasn't reared his ugly head after Clutch rubbed the pot. It's likely that he's been showing up off screen, but the possibility that he's the buyer is pretty intriguing. However, I'm a bit skeptical that it's him. For starters, where would he find the money to pay Vangelis? I mean, he could wish for money, but his infinite wishes ability was taken away when Jay reset the timeline. He might have manipulated Clutch in some way, but I'm not gonna lie, it feels like a stretch. Now, onto Pythor. He hasn't been seen at all since Day of the Departed, and Zane even says that his current whereabouts are unknown. I've mentioned earlier that he used Vengestone against the ninja before, so it wouldn't be surprising that he would try to use it again but with bigger chunks. Honestly, I think Pythor is more likely than Nauticon. I even put him higher on the list in my Vengestone Buyer video. That being said, I have my doubts that the buyer is actually either of them. Yes, they might be the most likely candidates, and a lot of people are convinced that it's either them, or like Ronin, Klaus, or even Garmadon. Look, I'm just saying that the likelihood of it being either of them is kind of reaching. I'm more convinced that the buyer is a completely new villain, and I also have a theory of my own that I like more. Another theory I've seen that's very intriguing is that the buyer is using it as a means for the police force to go against the ninja. Basically, the government and the citizens have had enough of the ninja being indirectly responsible for the damage done to the city and decide to oppose them through the use of Vengestone. That makes a lot more sense to me, and there is some precedence for that. After Harumi lost her parents to the Great Devourer way back in Season 1, she held the ninja responsible and believed that they were not real heroes. Ninjago City has gone through a lot of trauma in almost every season. Even a citizen said this: at some point, the citizens might reach their breaking point with the ninja and all the other elemental masters for their antics. Even the carnage in Seabound should have been like the last straw for the public opinion to shift. Ninjago City and practically the entire world was flooded, and there had to have been quite a lot of casualties. I also like the theory that the buyer is actually the mayor, who's been mentioned a couple of times.
I'm not much for speeches, but the mayor asked me to say a few words. Not really sure why the mayor couldn't do this herself. Never around, really. It's a riddle to me how she got elected in the first place. And the funding of the police department is...
The belief is that she's secretly a corrupt politician who pushes for the need of Vengestone, so they could slide that idea into the mix. Her influence and power, coupled with the amount of property damage and casualties, could motivate the police to use Vengestone against the Elemental Masters. It's not the first time they've done this either, so do you think it would be uncharacteristic if they did it with all of them? This falls in line with the common attitude towards vigilantes. In almost every form of media, a superhero is often always on the run or being questioned by the police unless there is someone within that department working with the hero. It plays into the mindset of what happens when someone takes the law into his or her own hands. Of course you'll have police on your tail. And when you get casualties, public opinion will not skew to your favor, and people will demand your resignation in any way. You'll be hearing chanting from mobs screaming, "Lock them up! Lock them up!" This is exactly like Captain America's Civil War, when public opinion and government interference began to surface in response to all the big fights that the Avengers faced. Now that we've gone through most of the popular theories, let's get into my theory. I see the Buyer as someone who holds a grudge against elemental masters and elemental powers as a whole. With the amount of Vengestone that Vangelis has been mining and the amount of time that the deal has lasted, it is evident that this person, whoever he or she might be, has a huge vendetta or a large amount of fear against the ninja. Maybe the Buyer has some strong belief that the elemental masters are abominations and should not exist. He or she might be xenophobic and believes that the ninja are abusing their powers and are being left unchecked, which leads to the amount of destruction that Ninjago City has gone through. That could be the reason for why he or she has so much Vengestone. The Buyer wants to take those powers away due to his or her opinion that elemental masters are dangerous, cause destruction, and should be eradicated or reduced to ordinary people. As crazy as it sounds, I see our mysterious person as someone who has a xenophobic and racist mindset. Holding a certain prejudice and hatred against elemental masters and viewing them as abominations that should no longer exist would make for an interesting antagonist. It would lead to the deep themes of racism, prejudice, and how far people are willing to go to show their disdain for a specific group. A xenophobic, elemental-hating villain sounds like a very crazy idea, I will not lie. But really think about it. He or she made a deal with the Skull Sorcerer to purchase a shit ton of Vengestone from a mountain. And look at how much Vengestone Misdemeanor had to smuggle here. If you're
willing to pay dearly for it,
and if that's just one of many shipments that you've ordered, then it's either overkill or you want Elemental Masters dead. You must have a grudge against them that's the size of Jupiter or something, because that looks like a lot of Vengestone to me. Unless he or she bought all that Vengestone to make a special castle. A star for anyone who figures out the name of the castle and what movie it's from. While I personally think that the Skull Sorcerer's customer is after Vengestone to put an end to elemental masters, I think the government theory works as well. Responding out of fear that the ninja and other elemental masters are going too far, or just hate their very existence and want to wipe them off the face of the earth entirely, would be a very engaging story. It would have a lot of thematic elements of political pressure, public opinion, and or personal hatred and prejudice. As to how our anonymous client is going to use all that Vengestone, I have no idea. But I prefer that over
the return of Pythor and or Nauticon.
Look, don't get me wrong, I love Pythor and Nauticon, but the Buyer's desire to rid Ninjago of elemental powers sounds like a more entertaining story to me. But if the Pythor, Nauticon, or even the government theory turns out to be true, then I will happily eat my words and engage with the story that Tommy and Bragi want to tell. They promise that the best is yet to come, so I'm genuinely excited for next year. But those were my thoughts on why the Skull Sorcerer's customer would want to buy so much Vengestone. Let me know what you think about all that. Remember that all of this was speculation, even the Pythor and Nauticon theory. Out of all of them, which theory do you like the most? Was I close to any of them? Was I way off? What do you think that the Buyer wants with all that Vengestone? And who do you think it is? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section. Alright, that's all for today. Did you enjoy the video? I hope you did, because I had to pour out all my brain cells onto the script, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, because that would be amazing. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I have accounts right there. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!